Okay, hello class. We're going to read an excerpt from this comic called From the Vocabulary of Comics by Scott McCloud. I'm going to let you just silently read the first couple of pages, and then I'll be adding commentary as we go through it, and I'll read the rest of it out loud. This is going to get pretty deeply philosophical. The painting that's in reference here is called The Treachery of Images. The underlying message of that artwork is to show that making a picture of something is actually an illusion. It's not really a pipe in this circumstance, but you're mixing together paint or ink or pixels or some element to create an image that gives the impression of the real thing, to have you draw that from your memory. The treachery of images. So we're going to talk about the icon. These are not ideas. This is not a man. This is not a country. This is not a leaf. These are not people. This is not music. This is not a sound that you see there. This isn't a cow, or flowers, or a planet, or food, or a face. These are not separate moments. All this is, in your case, is pixels on a computer screen that represent ink on a paper that's been photocopied, that represent ideas through the icon. The word icon can mean a lot of things, but for the purposes of this, we're going to use the word icon to mean any image to represent a person, place, thing, or idea. An image used to represent a person, place, thing, or idea. Let's look at some of these icons that we call symbols on the left. Symbol for anarchy, the yin and yang, for balance and peace, the US flag, the Star of David, the Nazi swastika. This symbol is a symbol used for Christianity, ExxonMobil. These are images used to represent ideas and philosophies, and it is not surprising if you have an emotional reaction to any of these. For example, if you grew up in the United States, you might have some sort of patriotism or feeling inside your heart that comes up when you see this symbol. If you have a Jewish heritage and background, and that is your religion, then you probably have some feelings tied to this symbol. Some of these symbols elicit really strong emotional reactions for me. The swastika, for example, brings up really, really hard, difficult feelings. It's very offensive to me. And the reason for this on all of these symbols is you have some sort of context or experience tied to that image or that imagery. Context is everything. If you don't have an emotional reaction to one of these ideological symbols, then perhaps you don't have enough information about what those symbols are tied to. Different people may feel differently about the same symbol. For example, I think it's pretty common with my students to see this fish symbol and not realize that it represents Christianity. But if I add the context that there was a time where people were being persecuted for their religious beliefs and even executed for their religious beliefs, and people would walk up to each other, and if they felt safe, they might talk about their religious beliefs. And the way to test that without being persecuted or executed during Roman reign was one person would make an arc in the sand with their foot in front of them, and if the recipient on the other side, standing on this side, did the same thing and finished the fish, those people knew they could talk openly. With that added context, it might give you a new perspective when you see that symbol the next time. Okay. There's also symbols and icons of language and science and communication, like the letters of the alphabet, numbers, symbols that we associate to help with communication. These are Chinese symbols, mathematical symbols, symbols doing with currency and percentage, music, more math, Latin, etc. And there are icons that we call pictures, images that are designed to actually resemble the subject that they are depicting. Some might be really cartoony, some might be more realistic. Some pictures are more iconic than other pictures. Words are formed up of letters and are totally abstract icons. They don't resemble the real-life object. The letters E, Y, E don't look anything like the word, don't look anything like the real thing that they represent. The word I doesn't look like an I. It's abstract. But in pictures, the level of abstraction varies. Some, like the face in previous panel, are very close to the real-life counterpart. Others are a bit more abstract and maybe unlike a human face. Let's see if we can put these pictorial icons in some sort of order. The photograph and realistic pictures are icons that most resemble their real-life counterparts. There are many things that set apart this picture from a real face. But the pictorial icon is pretty realistic. However, somewhat more abstract in the style of drawing found in many comics. So we simplify it and we simplify it. Only outlines and a hint of shading. But you still recognize this as a human face. And you can abstract it even further. Further from reality, however, you still see this as a face. And it may seem just as real as the photograph, perhaps even more real or relatable. What's the secret of the icon we call the cartoon? And now we might call this super simplified cartoon an emoji. Why are we so involved? Why would anyone, young or old, respond to a cartoon as much or more than a realistic image? Why is our culture so enthralled to the simplified reality of the cartoon? So I want you to think for just a moment of a cartoon, animated, computer animated, or show to which you had an emotional response. You had an actual emotional response. I will admit that there have been times where an animated film has brought me to tears. For example, the first time I saw Bambi, I was brought to tears. I will admit that I was brought to tears when I saw Coco for the first time. And cartoons frequently elicit a laughing response from me. So think to yourself about a time when a cartoon, set of pictures of fictional characters, brought you to a heightened emotional state. And I want you to take just a minute, you can pause the video, and just contemplate why. Why would you be so involved with fictitious characters that perhaps aren't even human? Why would you care? When you're ready, you can start the video again. Defining cartoons would take up as much space as defining comments, but we're going to simplify it and examine it as amplification through simplification. When we extract an image through cartooning, we're not so much eliminating details as we are focusing on specific details. By stripping down an image to its essential meaning, an artist can amplify that meaning in a way that realistic depictions cannot. Think of emojis again. Film critics will sometimes describe a live-action film as a cartoon, acknowledging the stripped-down intensity of the story. The ability of cartoons to focus our attention on an idea is, I think, an important part of their power, whether you're talking about comics or drawing generally. Another of the powers is the universality of cartoon imagery. The more cartoony a face is, for instance, the more people it can be said to describe. This photo on the left, that's Bob. I recognize Bob anywhere. But as we get over here, perhaps this just represents a male in general. And this could represent just about anybody. Which again is why I believe emojis are so popular as a means of communication. But I believe there's something more at work in our minds when we view a cartoon, especially of a human face, which warrants further investigation. What are you really seeing? The fact that your mind is capable of taking a circle, 2 dots, and a line and turning them into a face is nothing short of incredible. But still more incredible is the fact that you cannot avoid seeing a face here. Your mind won't let you. Go ahead, try turning upside down. Still going to look like an upside down face to you. Why is that? I want you to try this activity. And again, you can pause if you can pause the video if you need to. Draw some shapes on a piece of paper. They should be closed curves, but otherwise can be as weird and irregular as you want. Something sort of like what you're seeing here. Now, you'll find that no matter what the shapes look like, every single one of those shapes can be made into a face with one simple addition. Your mind has no trouble at all converting such shapes into faces. Yet you would never mistake that target-looking eyeball shape for a real eyeball, right? So why is it that a circle and a dot inside an abstract shape can become a face to you? Go ahead and try this activity for just a minute. Pause the video. We humans are a self-centered race. We see ourselves in everything. We assign identities and emotions where none exist. And we make the world over in our image. Think of your face as a mask. That is what it is, after all. A mask, facing outward, worn from the day you were born. Follows every command, seen by everyone you meet, but not by you. Smile. Nobody's watching. What changed when you smiled? What did you see? You didn't see any changes, right? But you know that you smiled because you felt your cheeks compress and the crinkling around your eyes. You know you smiled because you trusted this mask called your face, to respond. But the face you see in your mind is not the same as others see. When two people interact, they usually look directly at each other, seeing each other's features in vivid detail. However, you also sustain a constant awareness of your own face in your mind. But your mind picture is not nearly so vivid, just a sketchy arrangement, a sense of shape, a sense of general placement. Sometimes, maybe, as simple and basic as a cartoon. You know this is true because when you become aware of what you might look like to another person, it often changes what your actual facial expression does. If you've ever been forced to smile for a picture or become self-conscious about what you look like when you're talking to someone, you know that your facial expression changes and often doesn't represent the image that you actually want to portray to somebody else. You get a little self-conscious. We can take this idea of a mask even further, actually, because we often augment our faces, either by how we style our hair, or perhaps by putting on makeup, or something along those lines, and we alter our self-image in that way also, a mask on a mask. However, because we simplify our own self-image, and frankly, every object that we do see, into more simple arrangements for filing purposes in our brain, we can identify with cartoons more easily. Thus, when you look at a photo of a realistic drawing or face, you see it as the face of another person. But when you enter the world of the cartoon, you see yourself. I believe this is the primary cause of our childhood fascination with cartoons, though other factors such as universal identification, simplicity, and the childlike features of many cartoon characters also play a part. Cartoon is a vacuum into which our identity and awareness are pulled, an empty shell that we inhabit, which enables us to travel into another realm. We don't just observe the cartoon, we become it. That's why I decided to draw myself in such a simple style. Would you have listened to me if I looked like this? So visit again this idea with a cartoon that you've watched, that you had an emotional reaction to. If this theory holds up, it's basically stating that when you laugh at Homer Simpson when he stubs his toe, what's actually happening is that you are laughing because you empathize and you have put yourself in Homer's position. You've been there before. You are that character, and that's why you think it's funny. You've been there. And conversely, if a cartoon ever made you cry, you have projected yourself into the characters on screen. It's a facade. They're pictures. Pictures put together in rapid motion. Sometimes not even human. Sometimes it's, fish or deer or something else. But they often have some features and relatable context. The emotional response to the death of a character that you have come to know through stories and relatability can elicit a real emotional response. So what is real? You will bring yourself into a cartoon or an icon. So that's an introduction to iconography and also an introduction to cartooning. And we'll explore both of those to a degree.